Well, welcome back. This is the fifth and final segment of the set of lectures on duties and rights and their role in the ethical decision making. Our topic is justifying moral rights, and we'll review some of the ways that the rights have been, justifications have offered for people having rights. Specific moral rights are usually justified by promises. My promise to you, if I freely make a promise to you, this creates a duty that I owe to you, and because I owe you a duty, I have a correlative duty, and that creates a right that you have against me. And similarly, contracts create two rights because there are two promises involved, an offer and an acceptance. And the justification base of these moral rights created by promises is the justification of promise keeping. And promise keeping, just to review, through Kant we have this view that you should only do things that you can universalize, i.e. say that everybody should do. Not keeping promises is not something that you can universalize, because if you try to universalize the idea that you can break a promise whenever you want to, then the whole institution of promising collapses. Therefore, keeping promises is an ethical duty, and therefore promises create duties, and duties create rights, as I just said. There are a couple of other ways, though, that you can get general moral rights. Two sorts. You can get them either derivatively or non-derivatively. Non-derivatively means that they depend on some natural feature of the right holder. They're natural rights. Derivative rights are actually not justified. They're rights that aren't justified by an independent theory of rights, but by other ethical theories like indirect utilitarianism or justice. Remember, we talked about how direct utilitarian reasoning could sometimes lead to strange and wonderful cases like the transplant surgeon who thought that he should chop up a healthy person in order to save 5 other people. We argued that indirect utilitarianism, where you didn't apply utilitarianism to each act but to sort of rules or virtues or sets of rights, would actually prevent this, because there would be an indirect utilitarian reason for giving people a right to personal security, because they would, if they didn't have that right, they would be very, very unhappy, because they would always be insecure. They'd be feeling like if they went to the hospital, they were likely to be chopped up. So the indirect utilitarian justification says that rights are justified because giving people rights has good consequences, makes people happier. You can also have a case where you can derivatively assign rights, but through a theory of justice. A theory of distributive justice may say that what's fair is that certain people should have these rights, say, to this property or not, or rights to liberty, and etc. And this assignment of rights from justice is also, in a sense, derivative. It's still principle-based, but it is not directly from features of the person who has the rights. Okay, and I suppose, in a sense, promises create derivative rights too, because they're derivative on the promise that somebody else makes to you, not on some feature of yourself. But natural rights are justified by natural features that are valuable and require protection. And there's 2 suggestions about this. One's called the will theory, which is based on the ability to consent and the importance of that ability, which must be protected. And the other is based on the notion of crucial interests, where some interests are so important that they must have special protection, and that special protection is given by rights, and those interests always trump other less important interests through their being rights that are protected. So here's a map of this. General rights can have either derivative or non-derivative justifications. 2 examples are indirect utilitarianism and theories of justice, which both produce assignments of rights for different purposes, this way to make the world fair and this way to make the world happy. And I'm going to look just a little bit more detail about the notion of natural rights, which are based either on a respect for people's free will or ability to consent, and a respect for certain interests that people have, certain crucial interests that people have. The will theory of rights says that the essence of a right is that the person has the power either to insist that other people follow their correlative duties or to consent to them not doing so. So the person can make a choice, free choice, their free will, of whether to insist on other people doing what they have promised to do. A good example is holding someone to a promise. You can choose to let somebody off a promise if you wish, or you can choose to insist or hold them to their promise. And a person, what that person's duties and obligations are somehow depend on the right holder's choice or will or decision on the matter. The interest theory works differently. It insists that some people have others have correlative duties to protect certain crucial interests, okay, of the right holder. And the natural feature is these crucial interests that people have. A crucial interest is not just an interest in chewing gum. That's not a crucial interest. That's a trivial interest, or an everyday interest or something. But something like the right to life, the right to food, the right to habitation or something, these are crucial interests that people have. And these, according to the interest theory, deserve special protection that allows these interests to trump things. No amount of people chewing gum will add up to enough happiness to trump in any way somebody's right to life. Life is more important than gum chewing. The other view is what's called the will theory, and it is this idea that people can consent to right infringements, and they can insist that other people carry out their duties. This capacity to make these sorts of choices is called autonomy. It's the capacity to, and that's what that's what this will theory insists rights respect. Where the basis of rights is that they protect people from threats to autonomy. There's different threats to autonomy, like coercion, manipulation, lack of information, people lying to you, right? And these things threaten people's autonomy. And they also, lack of information, for example, may affect somebody's informed consent to infringements. That's why if you go into a hospital and a surgeon cuts you open and removes one of your organs, that is a gross infringement of your right to personal security, your bodily security. However, you, in this case, can consent, right, and to that procedure, and it's probably in your best interest to consent, we'll assume. But the consent has to be informed, right? Informed consent to the infringement. So this all ties into this notion of somebody's choices being extremely important and being protected by rights. The interest theory, the interest theory protects crucial interests. It doesn't protect immoral interests. You don't have a right to be a sadist or a racist or something. You don't have a right necessarily to be selfish, so that you should want more than your fair share. You don't have a right to trivial things like candies and Coke, and you don't have a right to everyday choices like you prefer Big Mac to a pizza, whatever. They're non-crucial interests. Only crucial interests are protected. So not every interest justifies a right, and the problem is that it's difficult to say which interests are crucial and thus which interests deserve the protection of rights. And that is, it's just a problem for this theory. There is a sort of proliferation of rights. People think that everything they want is their right, and that's pushing this notion of a right based on protection of crucial interests too far. Where the line is, I can't tell you. So we have different ways of justifying moral rights. Ethical theories mostly principle-based justifications, though there is this one consequence-based indirect utilitarian view that rights make people happier. The justice view assigns rights in a way to make the world fair, but straight out of the principle-based rights-duties approach, we have specific rights that are grounded in, usually in promises and people's duties to keep promises. And we have natural general rights that are based in natural features, that very broad natural features that people have, either crucial interests or the ability to make informed consent and informed decisions. So which of the following is most relevant to an indirect utilitarian justification of derivative general rights? So pause the video, think about this question, and come back in a second. Well, let's start at the bottom. The Charter of Rights is fair. That seems to have been part of another question. The Charter of Rights is, the rights in the Charter of Rights are justified because they are fair. This is a justice-based indirect, justice-based derivative justification of a general right, but it's not an indirect utilitarian right justification. It is the rights here are, because they're justified by a theory of justice, we will say, maybe this isn't totally true, they're derivative. They're not natural. Haitians have a right to disaster relief. Well, they have a right, but this is just an example of a positive right, and it doesn't say anything about a justification. People strongly prefer not to have to worry about their personal security. Well, that is an obviously utilitarian view, and it's probably an indirect justification, derivative justification for general rights. So this is a possibility. Don't jump to the first one you see, because, as I explained before, professors are tricky devils, and they may be trying to fool you. So let's have a look here. People have a significant interest in avoiding suffering. Well, this is also a utilitarian point, an interest in avoiding suffering, right? That's a utilitarian point. But is it an indirect justification, a derivative justification of derivative? Is it a derivative justification? Well, it probably fits better with an interest-based justification, a natural rights based on crucial interests. People have a significant interest in avoiding suffering, and that interest will trump other interests. So probably your best interpretation here, despite what I said about the tricky professors, is that this is in fact an interest-based justification of the right to avoid suffering. What you have here is an indirect utilitarian. Strongly prefer. They really want this. Not saying it's a significant interest, it's that they really want it, and that is enough to justify a set of rights of personal security. And that's a derivative justification based on indirect utilitarian thinking of a general right to personal security. All right, that's all on rights and duties, and see you next week.